Gang, what's up? Aaron here, Canadian Looney. We've got Vassy back with Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer. Andrew Scheer is one of the funniest guys in Parliament on the whole House of Commons floor. Vassy Capellos, take her or leave her. She used to be a journalist, now she's a CTV hack. Let's see which version of Vassy we get in this one. Andrew Scheer's always fun to watch. Is he going to put Vassy in her place? Let's take a peek.
Hey, that's something everyone can enjoy.
Joining us now is Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer. Hi, Mr. Scheer. Good to have you back on the program. Thanks for making the time.
Good afternoon. How you doing?
Good, thank you. I hope you're doing well as well. I wanted to start off on the question of not necessarily if you're going to support it because you haven't seen it, but just based, I read the statement that your party put out, which was immediately criticizing the legislation. And I'm wondering why, if you haven't read the details, you aren't waiting until you do before you say this is bad.
Well, based on what the government has announced, what they've basically acknowledged is that they are not going to tackle bail reform. This is not bail reform. First of all, what I would have loved to have seen from a Liberal Prime Minister making an announcement claiming to undo previous Liberal laws that caused the crime wave is an apology. Mark Carney stood up there and he's trying to act like he's responding to some new thing that came out of left field. Liberal changes to our bail regime caused the crime wave that is plaguing so many Canadian communities. And I would have liked to have seen a Liberal Prime Minister make a direct apology to all the victims of crime that have had their lives shattered because of criminals that this government set free. They didn't do that. In typical arrogant Liberal fashion, they just tried to act like they should get a hero cookie for trying to clean up their own mess. Nothing in this announcement today changes the principle of least restraint that the Liberal government brought in that forces judges to grant bail as an almost automatic option.
So I spent about, more than half of the last interview asking the government representative why they aren't repealing that. And I do take your point on the initial legislation in C-75. My understanding, though, is, by focusing on major crimes, for example, and what the previous bill in 2023 did, it allows for that principle to remain part of the guidance for non-violent crimes, for non-repeat offenders, which might actually go toward helping reduce some of the backlogs in the courts. Why not remain open to that possibility?
Well, I think you've asked a great question. It gives me an opportunity to contrast the Liberal approach and the Conservative approach as it relates to this key point. Reverse onus does not make bail harder to get. If you think of bail, an accused getting bail as a hurdle that has to be jumped over, reverse onus just changes the direction in which the accused has to run to jump over it. The Liberals have set that so incredibly low that it kind of doesn't matter which direction the criminal is trying to jump over it from. This reverse onus list does not take away that principle of least restraint. It just shifts who has to make the arguments about whether or not bail should be granted. And judges will still have to look at the changes Liberals brought in and say, I am bound by this legislation to follow the principle of least restraint. And it won't really matter if it's the Crown arguing or if it's the accused arguing. They're still going to have that very low barrier to bail. And what we've seen since the Liberals changed these laws, there has been an explosion. We're not talking about a slight tick up, or we're not talking about, in specific areas. Violent crime is up across the board, across the country. It's up over 60%. Crimes with firearms is up, almost doubled. So we're talking about places that used to be safe, people that used to be able to park their car at night and go to evening events, go to restaurants, don't feel safe anymore. And so many lives have been shattered by criminals that this government has let out. So that's the key difference between the Liberal approach and the Conservative approach. We want to take away that principle of least restraint so that dangerous or repeat offenders actually go to jail.
I do understand that, but I'm looking at, for example, all the submissions put forward by the various police associations, which ask for exactly what the government says it's going to do, which is apply that principle of reverse onus. I look at the reaction today from the Toronto Police Association, which represents police officers in that city. They say this is a step in the right direction. The Canadian Police Association, this should be a moment for collaboration, not division. We urge all parties to engage constructively and pass this legislation as quickly as possible to enhance public safety and restore Canadians' diminished confidence in the justice system. What do you know that police don't?
Well, I know that police have been calling for the elimination of that principle of least restraint. And while they may have been calling for other things, we continue to point out the fact that basically what the Liberals' approach is this. Liberals look at dangerous and repeat offenders, and they have compassion for that accused person. They have compassion for that criminal, and they say, "Oh, these poor people that fall into a life of crime, and it's not really their fault, and let's not make them go to jail." Conservatives, our compassion are for victims of crime. Our compassion is for the moms and dads that no longer let their kids go to the park, business owners who are getting extorted. I mean, Vassy, when you were growing up, did you ever hear about Canadian business owners getting extorted? That's something you saw in movies and mobster films. This is now happening in many communities across the country. You can draw a direct line to Liberal legislation that both lowered penalties for dangerous and repeat offenders, but also forced judges to grant bail. And what we're saying is, let's adopt, if you want to have collaboration, if Liberals are willing to admit that they've made mistakes, great. Go the whole way. Work with us to pass Conservative bill, jail, not bail, that will take away that principle of least restraint and keep those dangerous and repeat offenders behind bars so that they can't terrorize Canadians.
But again, today, Mr. Scheer, I don't hear police associations saying what you are, which is this doesn't go nearly far enough. We need to repeal that principle. And even if they were to repeal that principle, there are still 3 pieces of case law, including in 2019, the Supreme Court case R versus Antic, that was kind of the impetus for the legislation in the first part that guides judges' decisions anyway. So even if you repealed what you say the government should, you would still have a judiciary that is guided by that principle to some effect. Applying reverse onus to major crimes will impact the way in which they're able to apply the principle and keep it to nonviolent crimes, will it not?
No, really, all reverse onus means is which party in the court case has to make the arguments. That barrier to getting bail is still incredibly low with that principle of least restraint. And as to the court decisions that the Liberals used as an excuse, I know that's what the Liberals want people to believe, was that there was some court ruling that forced them to write this law. It's just not the case. Those court rulings were kind of speaking to financial surety around bail. Once bail was granted, what conditions were attached to that. The Liberals chose to take those court rulings and build a hole that you could drive a Mack truck through for forcing judges to grant bail. So they nowhere in that court decision did it force the government to bring in Bill C5 and Bill C75. They codified the principle of least restraint. That is what led to the explosion in crime across the country. And we believe Canadians support us in this, that bringing in our jail, not bail law meets the charter test of a reasonable response to a pressing and substantial issue facing Canadians. And I don't believe there's a Canadian out there who has had their car stolen or had their business broken into or seen someone, yelling threats on a bus or a subway that doesn't believe that crime right now, after 10 years of Liberal policies, is not a pressing and substantial issue.
Yeah, I don't mean to say that they were forced to codify it. It was their decision to codify it, but the cases do exist in case law. I just have to, before I let you go, Mr. Scheer,
but they do not relate to the principle of least restraint.
It's about the latter principle. The judgment in R versus Antic did criticize lower courts for routinely overusing bail conditions. But I have to move on to just one thing, if you don't mind, before I let you go, because the leader of your party made some comments in a podcast that I want to get your take on, because it's actually about policing. The podcast, I believe, was taped October 3rd, posted yesterday. He was referencing the RCMP's decision not to pursue criminal charges against Justin Trudeau or other people in the government over their involvement in the SNC scandal. Mr. Poilievre characterized the leadership of the RCMP as, quote, despicable when it comes to enforcing laws against the Liberal government, and accused them of covering up for Trudeau. Do you have proof of that?
Did you hear the taped audio between the Liberal Prime Minister's clerk of the Privy Council and former Justice Minister Jody Wilson-Raybould? because I heard that audio recording, and I heard explicit and implicit threats to a justice minister to grant, if she did not grant a special deal to SNC-Lavalin. I believe that's a matter of public record, and so I certainly I don't agree with the idea that there was not an attempt to interfere in the justice minister's role as an independent officer of the court.
But that's not what I asked, Mr. Scheer. You have a view that a crime was committed. The accusation from Mr. Poilievre, who in a matter of weeks or months could run an election and be prime minister, is that the RCMP leadership covered up for the prime minister. That's a very direct accusation about the leadership of our national police force. Do you have evidence of it?
Well, as I just pointed out, there's direct evidence of an attempt by the prime minister, a sitting Liberal prime minister, to interfere with the attorney general's carrying out of her duties. That audio was released. I listened to it on I believe you probably have too. And that is what I would point to. That when the RCMP says, "Oh, there's no evidence of interference," it's like, well, sorry, what more do you need? There's other cases where the Justin Trudeau's illegal acceptance of a private holiday that the RCMP chose not to investigate. So there's a lot of examples where senior Liberals have been caught breaking the law or attempting, or at least what a reasonable person would say there's evidence that should be explored, and the RCMP chose not to.
No, but the RCMP did choose to explore that evidence, and they have testified
they chose not
to the fact,
they chose not to proceed to the point where
public statements. Wait a second, public statements on record saying that they were not able to obtain certain cabinet confidences. So why is that a cover-up? Isn't that the fault of cabinet at the time or the government at the time? Shouldn't your ire be directed at the political level and not at calling the leadership of the RCMP despicable and covering up for a prime minister?
Well, I absolutely believe that the Liberals acted despicably in this,
and
I would just continue to
the RCMP commissioners who Mr. Poilievre accused.
I don't think you can make the accusation that I or my leader Pierre Poilievre were not holding the Liberals accountable for their role in this as well. I mean, we absolutely attempted to prosecute both the SNC-Lavalin scandal, the Green Slush Fund scandal. We tried to get those documents to the RCMP. We tried to get the RCMP to take action and elevate this to a level where these crimes would actually be prosecuted. That's not what happened. So I think my leader has a strong case to make when he calls this out, and we certainly believe that the leadership of the RCMP should act independently and should not be afraid to hold politicians accountable.
He said today, the commissioner of the RCMP, that he doesn't answer to any politician, that he isn't beholden to anyone. Do you not believe him?
Well, I just continue to point out that when you have Liberal politicians attempting to interfere in an independent court case, accepting illegal gifts, funneling money through Liberal board members in the Green Slush Fund, where the Liberals split their friends and political donors onto a board to allocate taxpayers' money, and they allocated that taxpayers' money. They gave it to themselves. They gave it to their own companies, and still, we haven't seen criminal prosecutions on that. We saw the RCMP completely abandon the SNC-Lavalin affair when there was an audio of the Prime Minister's right-hand man, Michael Wernick, trying to pressure Jody Wilson-Raybould into making a decision she did not believe was just. And so I think I've laid out a very compelling case that would certainly run counter to the quote you might have from the RCMP.
Okay, I got.
How many kids did you molest with Jeffrey Epstein? More than just elbows.
All right, gang. So Vassy was pretty trashy in that one. Go Liberals. Like, what kind of a cheerleader is this CTV fake journalist hack? Like, again, a couple of good interviews don't make you a journalist. You've got to have some consistency, Vassy. Like, oh, Lord. Anyhow, what are you going to do? Aaron right here, Canadian Looney, thank you very much for watching. Andrew Scheer is one of my favorites to watch. He's very entertaining. He's funny, at least. Pretty sharp, too. We'll catch you in the next video. Thank you for watching this one. Get your Canadian federal politics right here.